Well, I'm on the campus of Sam Houston State University's Raven Nest Golf Club today, and I'm going to go through a variety of weeds and grasses and shrubs and vines, maybe even some trees as we look around. And this is a late April day, and we're in transition from some of the cool season things that are abundant around us, and then we're moving into the warm season plant material. So a lot of changes, and this is a time to see many different plant species. So I'm going to cover quite a few of them for you today. Let's start with one of the most problematic weeds and turf in the southern United States. But it's actually a fairly good forage crop. This particular clumping grass grows in bunches, is known as Dallas grass, Paspalum dilatatum. And you can see that the bunches are kind of low growing. The leaves sort of hug the ground. Sometimes when they're unmowed, they'll grow a little bit more upright, as you can see here. These leaves tend to grow upright, and in other areas where it's mowed frequently, the plant tends to flatten out, and you can see that the clumps are quite large. The digestibility of this foliage is actually quite good. It's usually superior to most of the other warm season perennial grasses. So it's not bad to have in a pasture, except sometimes it produces a seed head, and maybe I can find a seed head a little bit later. I don't see any here right now. It's a little bit early in the season. And those seed heads can sometimes get a fungus in them called ergot. And that ergot can cause some behavioral issues with our animals. It's not extremely toxic, but it does cause problems. So, Dallas grass. Here's the inflorescence of a Dallas grass plant. So you can see it can get up pretty tall. It's probably about 16 inches tall. There's that broad leaf of Dallas grass. The inflorescence is a bit fuzzy looking, and you'll see these little structures emerging from the flowers. I don't know if I can focus on them very well. Those are just stigmas and anthers. Nothing to that, just flower parts. Usually when we get ergot problems, it shows up later on in the summertime. So there will be about 4 or 5, sometimes 6 of these little branches that come off the inflorescence of Dallas grass. And you can see this one's growing quite upright because it hasn't been mowed. That can produce quite a bit of forage, but not like some of our other warm season perennial grasses. Here you can see some new growth emerging from the perennial below ground portions of this plant. The flowers haven't formed yet. This is the leaf tissue spring growth of black-eyed Susan. And right there is the remnants of last season's flower. That's all we have is a little central ball. It's a member of the Compositae family. Black-eyed Susan. A little patch of bluebonnets. Again, bluebonnets are indicative of the soil pH, usually, and the type of soil. They really prefer the blackland soils, which tend to be near neutral in pH and have abundant calcium in them. This pretty little blue flower is usually referred to as blue-eyed grass, but it's not a grass. In fact, no grasses have attractive flowers like this. It's in the lily family, but it's low growing and it has long lance-shaped leaves which look kind of like a grass, but anyhow, Just a little spring plant. Attractive, not much significance. This plant here is becoming a serious invasive weed for us. Get a little closer to it. It's called Brazilian vervain. It's a verbena. Bees like it. Little bluish, purple blue flower. It's a perennial plant. It won't die in the winter. It'll die back, but it comes back very fast in the spring. And it gets about 6 to 7 feet tall, and it forms a community because it spreads underground. So once you get it, it starts to thicken up. There's the leaf on it. Square stem. All the vervains, or verbenas, have a square stem. See if I can focus on these a little bit more. Can't get a very good focus. We have a couple of other verbenas around here, but they're much shorter and not nearly as invasive as this Brazilian vervain. Those are blue vervain and Texas vervain. Pretty little flowers. Invasive plant here. Here's an interesting plant of the tallgrass prairie. Seems to prefer the heavy clay blackland type soils. It's called broadleaf plantain. It's a very wide leaf. There's several plantains and they all have this similar leaf venation where you see the parallel veins in the leaves. But the other ones have a much narrower leaf. And these are in bloom. They don't smell particularly well. And you can see they're visited some by the bees. They're also visited by other insects, pollinators, as well as some insects we don't like too much, like love bugs. Broadleaf plantain. I call this a trash plant. What you're looking at in the brown tissue there is last season's growth that's had frost and winter freezes on it. And we're also looking here at last season's inflorescences. This year's inflorescences won't emerge until late summer. But the new leaf tissue is coming. You can see it's kind of purple colored. Greenish with purple cast to it. This is called bushy blue stem because the inflorescence is terminal and it's very bushy looking when it comes out in the late summer, early fall. It is really a worthless forage plant. In fact, it's a serious weed. You find it a lot around bodies of water or where water stands. And there are a number of different blue stems out there. Some of them are excellent quality range grasses, but this is an invader. This one is not one you want to see. Very low in palatability and poor quality. Here's a pretty fair stand of what I've already declared is a very poor quality forage, and that's bushy blue stem, scattered in amongst the ryegrass and eastern backrus, a little bit of Johnson grass in there. Again, it likes a lot of water, so it's going to be on the heavy textured soils that have high water holding capacity, or it might be growing along the edge of a pond. And there's your broadleaf plantain coming into view. Here's another very undesirable species of grass, bunch type grass. Again, most of what you're looking at is last summer's growth. This is another one of those blue stems, but this isn't bunchy or bushy like the bushy blue stem was at the terminal inflorescence. But this is equally sorry as a forage plant. Very poor quality, very low palatability, and this is called broom sedge blue stem. It usually grows on a little bit drier sites than the bushy blue stem. A little bit different growth of the new springtime growth. Not as purple colored as the bushy blue stem. Little thinner leaves. That's all new spring, early summer growth. All of this will be replaced in late summer by new inflorescences. Broom sedge, blue stem. Trash. This is an interesting little grass. It looks a lot like Bermuda grass, common Bermuda grass, but it's not. This is a native species. It's stoloniferous, like Bermuda grass is, not rhizomatous, however. This is called buffalo grass. It generally grows out on to regions that are somewhat arid to semi-arid, parts of West Texas. Doesn't get much rain. It likes the shortgrass prairie. It was planted here. It's not native over here in East Texas. Someone planted it. A lot of people are trying to use it as a water savings crop or grass. It doesn't work quite that simply. What you're seeing here are the male inflorescences and leaf blades of buffalo grass. There's a female inflorescence also, and it's down in the canopy. I don't know if I can picture one. It grows down lower in the canopy. So it's one of the few grasses that actually has male and female inflorescences. You can see a stolon right there creeping across the ground. I'm not picking up a female flower right now, but it's a dioecious plant. Male and female parts, male and female flowers. Actually, separate male and female plants. Here is a common shrub that we usually find on the edge of the forest, occupying generally the same niche as yaupon, but this is a non-native species. In fact, it's quite invasive, known as either Japanese or Chinese privet. It is blooming right now here in late April. I will say it does have at least one redeeming feature, and that is the bees love it. It has a nice sweet odor to it, and the bees will visit this and make quite a bit of nectar from it, or collect the nectar and hopefully make honey. Anyhow, the leaf is sort of rounded. It's generally the same shape as a yaupon leaf. However, capture this bee over here working. The leaf of the privet is quite a bit softer than the leaf of the yaupon, and the yaupon leaf is a little waxier and darker colored. On top of that, if you snap the yaupon leaf near your ear, bend it over in half, it'll make a crunching sound, whereas privet generally does not do that. It's very soft. This Chinese privet or Japanese privet is covered with bees. The yaupon, which it resembles, has finished flowering about 2 to 3 weeks ago. So this fills a nice gap where you have it between the yaupon flow and the tallow tree flow, Chinese tallow tree. The yaupon and tallow are considered to be the more predominant honey producers in this region species. But I'm promising you there's a lot of nectar being pulled out of these blossoms on privet, an invasive species, as is the Chinese tallow. This is the Chinese tallow. It is, of course, an invasive species. It likes to grow in wet natured sites, heavy, poorly drained soils. It's an extremely important honey plant for southeast Texas. You'll see more of it as you get closer to the coast. Little forest of Chinese tallow trees. This one is showing the effects of a herbicide that was recently applied, and it's affecting the growth of the new leaves. The old leaves look normal, fairly normal. It will start flowering here in about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and that's when it will become an important honey plant for us. This is next to a honey locust that's dying because it was sprayed with a mixture of remedy herbicide plus diesel. Not the whole tree, just the base of the tree. And you can see how mean one of these trees can be. Those are all the spines growing out of the trunk of this tree. So this tree was a prolific seed producer. Golf course superintendent decided to try to kill it so it wouldn't keep spreading the seeds all over the golf course. It's a very invasive plant. This is your common milkweed in bloom. There are a few different butterfly caterpillars that like to feed on milkweed. When the seed pod gets produced, it's a long horn-shaped structure, and it often goes by the name of antelope's horn. You can see that insects like to use the flowers as a food and shelter place. Common milkweed. Oh yeah. Gets its name from the fact that there's an abundance of this milky latex. Many plants of the Euphorbiaceae family do this. They're not all called milkweed, but this is the real milkweed. I probably don't need to tell you this is a dandelion. Pretty yellow flowers followed by the inflorescence, which you see here, and the leaves, hard to see in this picture. They're kind of arrowhead shaped, deep divisions coming back away from the tip. This is a better illustration of the leaf structure of dandelion. Lots of dewberries in here. In fact, I think I'm going to go home and get me a bowl and come back. Now I got a hankering for dewberry cobbler and homemade bluebell vanilla ice cream right on top of it.